and was described by Erasmus as that incomparable light and ornament of British letters. He had probably been Henry's first teacher, for he claimed, "The honour of England I learned to spell in dignity royal, at that doth excel. I gave him drink of the sugared well of Helicon's waters crystalline, acquainting him with the Muses 9. He probably also taught Henry to read and to write in a rounded Italian at hand. Skelton was a colourful and eccentric character, an indifferent poet who wrote scurrilous, vitriolic satires such as The Bouche of Court, which targeted the corrupt courtiers of Henry VII's household. Unlike most court versifiers, Skelton wrote in English, not the customary French or Latin. He was conceited, quarrelsome, and often ribald. He took a cruel pleasure in exposing ladies of the court as whores, and was obsessed with young girls. Yet at the same time he set himself up as a champion of morality. Not surprisingly, he made many enemies. Skelton may have been in post by the time Henry was 3, for in a poem he composed to mark the boy's creation as Duke of York, he referred to him as a brilliant pupil. Around 1501, Skelton wrote a rather pessimistic Latin treatise, Speculum Principis, the mirror of a prince, for the edification of his charge. He urged him never to relinquish power to his inferiors and to choose a wife for yourself, prize her always and uniquely. In 1502, Skelton spent a short spell in prison for a minor misdemeanour, which effectively terminated his royal duties. Upon his release he was appointed rector of Diss in Norfolk, but around 1511 he was dismissed for living with a concubine. Thereafter he lived at Westminster, where he would write his most vituperative and famous poems. Along with Skelton, Prince Arthur's former tutor, the poet Bernard André, may have taught Henry Latin, and Gilles Dieu was perhaps his French master. The prince showed a flair for languages at an early age. By the time he became king, he was fluent in French, English, and Latin, and understands Italian well. In 1515, Venetian envoys conversed with Henry VIII in good Latin and French, which he speaks very well indeed. Henry customarily used Latin when speaking to ambassadors. He later acquired some Spanish, probably from his first wife, Catherine of Aragon. In 1519 he began studying Greek with the humanist Richard Croke, but soon gave it up, possibly for lack of time. Henry showed early on that he had inherited the family aptitude for music, and in 1498 his father bought him a lute, although no details of his tuition survive. He was also given instruction in all such convenient sports and exercises as behoveth his estate to have experience in, and that included the gentlemanly skills of riding, jousting, tennis, archery, and hunting. In 1499, when Henry was 8, Thomas More took Erasmus to visit the royal children at Eltham Palace, which resulted in the prince corresponding in Latin with Erasmus. The Dutch humanist suspected that Henry's tutors were helping him with the letters, and was later amazed to discover from Lord Mountjoy that they were all his own work. He later flattered himself that Henry's style emulated his own, because he had read Erasmus's books when young. Erasmus, who was by no means a sycophant, was to call Henry VIII a universal genius. He has never neglected his studies. As king, he would continue those studies, taking Cardinal Wolsey's advice to read the works of Duns Scotus, Thomas Aquinas, and the Church Fathers. He saw himself as a scholar and humanist, and desired to be recognized as such by learned men. His interest was genuine, and is attested to by the numerous annotations in his own hand in the margins of his surviving books. For Henry, learning was a great source of enjoyment, a journey of discovery for a mind avid for new information. He was extraordinarily well read for a layman and had wide interests. He also had some ability as a writer. His letters to the Vatican were exhibited as some of the most elegantly written ever received there, and as a speaker his eloquence was worthy of a great orator rather than a king. Henry had a sharp eye for detail and an encyclopedic memory. There was no necessary kind of knowledge, from a king's degree to a carter's, but he had an honest sight of it. He had a quick mind, superb organisational skills, and a formidable intellect. He possessed, wrote Erasmus, a lively mentality which reached for the stars, and he was able beyond measure to bring to perfection whichever task he undertook. The King's Majesty has more learning than any English monarch possessed before him, Thomas More claimed with some truth. He is in every respect a most accomplished prince, commented one Venetian, while another declared him to be so gifted and adorned with mental accomplishments of every sort that we believe him to have few equals in the world. Princes were routinely eulogized by commentators and ambassadors at this period, but the unanimous praises heaped on Henry VIII, sometimes expressed in private letters, undoubtedly contained a high degree of sincerity. Beyond his academic interests, Henry was creative and inventive, loved novelties, and enjoyed experimenting with mechanics and technology. He designed weapons and fortifications, and took an active interest in building plans. He also had a remarkable docility for mathematics, and was learned in all the sciences. The cupboards in his privy lodgings contained various scientific instruments. Henry had a passion for astronomy. The reformer Philip Melanchthon called him most learned, especially in the study of the movement of the heavens. Henry's astrolabe, bearing his crowned coat of arms, and made by a Norman, Sebastien Le Sene, is in the British Museum. As king, he would appoint as his chaplain the Oxford astronomer and mathematician John Robbins, who dedicated his treatise on comets to his master. The two men enjoyed many a discussion on astronomy. In 1540, Peter Appianus, a professor of mathematics from Ingolstadt, presented to Henry VIII his treatise Astronomicum Caesarium on astronomy and navigation. Henry's interest in maps is well documented, and it prepared the ground for the eventual mapping of England in the late 16th century. The king owned many maps, most of them rolled up in cupboards and drawers in his chambers and libraries, as well as map-making tools, a globe of paper, and a map made like a screen, indicating that he himself was something of a cartographer. Elaborate maps hung on the walls of the royal palaces and were used in court entertainments or for political strategy. In 1527, a Venetian mapmaker, Girolamo Verrazzano, presented the king with a world map, which was later hung in his gallery at Whitehall, along with 34 other maps, and there were maps of England, Scotland, Wales and Normandy in the gallery at Hampton Court. Later in the reign, the defence of the realm was a major preoccupation, and the king commissioned a plan of Dover from Sir Richard Lee, Surveyor of Calais, as well as a map of the English coastline from the Dieppe mariner John Rotts, who was appointed royal hydrographer in 1542. The atlas he produced, the Book of Hydrography, was dedicated to Henry. Henry also employed a French cosmographer, Jean Malard, who produced a book containing one of the first circular maps of the world. Henry emerged from his education as a prodigy of precocious scholarship. But by 1508, for reasons that are not clear, the autocratic Henry VII was keeping his son under such strict supervision that he might have been a young girl. Unlike his late brother, the prince was given no royal responsibilities, nor, it seems, much training in the arts and duties of kingship, apart from some sound schooling in history from the king himself. He was not permitted to leave the palace, unless it was by a private door into the park, and then only in the company of